Yo, what's up, drum and bass heads? Welcome back to another video about how to make a super classic dance floor drum and bass sound. I've been doing a few of these videos and you guys seem to be really appreciating it, so we're gonna cover just another one. And even though there are quite a few tutorials on how to make this specific sound, I think there's a couple of extra things that we can do to make it sound extra big and extra wide, so we're gonna dive into that today. And the sound that I'm talking about is basically the sound that was popularized by Darude's Sandstorm. It sounds a little bit something like this. So yeah, everybody obviously knows that sound, and it's been used many different times. It's used in, like for example, Dom Dolla has a recent remix of it that Subsonic did a bootleg of that now appears in drum and bass. And of course, it's in the mega popular song Desire by Subfocus and Dimension, which goes like this. And of course, it is in many other songs, and it's a super cool sound. I do believe it used to be a preset on some analog synth somewhere back in the day, and it's also not a really, that hard sound to make. So let's dive into how we can make a really interesting version of that today. So I got the notes here from Dimension's Desire, and our recreation that we're going to make just by itself sounds like this. Or a slightly more distorted version would sound like this. Anyway, you get the point. So let's dive into how to make this sound. As always, if you want to follow along, you want to get these notes right here, these MIDI notes. But if you're looking for this sound with a whole bunch of macros on it and over 150 other super high quality presets, then go have a look at the Drum and Bass Essentials preset pack. This is our flagship Serum preset pack, which contains almost every single lead, bass, womp, hit, fill, and sub that you could possibly need to start producing high quality drum bass right now. All right, without further ado, let's see how we did it. So let's grab these notes and get a fresh instance of Serum. And so if you have a keen ear for sort of what the basic shapes sound like, you would have probably already recognized that in the basses, this is a square wave. So we're gonna go into the basic shapes here, and we're gonna grab ourselves a square wave. And you can already immediately almost hear, if we put this 2 octaves up, that is already quite close to the sound. However, we need to create some grit in there. And so what we can do at 2 octaves lower than this one, we can introduce another wave. So let's also go to basic shapes and let's start introducing a triangle wave. And so this doesn't really do so much for the tonality. As a matter of fact, it's pretty boring, but it's going to interfere and basically cause frequency modulation on this square wave. Whenever you play a square wave with something else, they will interfere because the square wave is so straight that these are going to cause peaks and troughs, and that's going to cause a little bit of distortion, which you can already hear here. Now we're going to exacerbate that, of course, by adding actual distortion. So let's turn this tube drive all the way up. Immediately, we can also hear that we don't really need this low end, right? There's basically, we want this wave to interfere, but we don't actually want it to sound and form any type of lower tonalities here. So let's grab an EQ and let's just take that out almost immediately. So let's get rid of this bump here with the Q factor and maybe put it somewhere there. Now, additionally, what might help a little bit in terms of sort of fine-tuning where you want this to sit is to take this down a few semitones. So I'm just going to take it down 7 semitones because I found that works the best. I feel like that just gets the tonality a little bit more sort of brighter for me. Now, what we also might want to do, which is kind of cool, is we can give it a little bit of stabbiness. So let's get an LFO here and let's create a pretty fast shape. I also want to put this on like an 8th note because we want this to go pretty fast, and let's put it on envelope mode so it only triggers once. And let's do something quick like this. And then we're going to go into the matrix and we're going to assign LFO 1 to the master tuning. The reason that we do this is so that we get at the very beginning and very quickly, a little bit of a pitch bend, like super fast. So we definitely want this to be single polar, not bipolar. And we really don't need this to be that much. Let's put it on 10. So you can hear that now it's giving a little bit of a pitch bend. We don't want it to be quite that intense. We just want it to cause a bit of a transient at the beginning. Nice. Similarly, to make it a little bit more snappy, we could also apply this to the filter here. Now, let's just And let's also give it some drive to sort of maybe distort it a tiny bit extra. There we go, nice. Now we can still hear some of that lower end stuff that we don't really want. And what's really cool, we can actually pre or post filter also in this distortion here. And the cool thing about this is this filter is not so heavy. Like, it doesn't have a very sharp curve going downwards. I think it's equal to like a MG low 6, for example. And you can change this to be a high pass. And we're gonna sort of put this around, like, let's say 200. Let's type it in here, 200. And put this at 1. Cool. All right, now the last two things that you definitely want to do is put some reverb and delay on it. And after that, we'll talk about some sort of options that you have to make the sound a bit fatter and wider. So yeah, we're going to put the delay at the end of the chain. And but we're going to take this size down just a little bit because it doesn't have to sound that big. And same for this decay. And we can hear that some weird stuff is happening somewhere along the notes. It's kind of, I think it's crushing its own tail a bit. You hear that? So I think we can solve that by cutting a little bit more of this up. Yeah, with that MG low filter. I'm not sure what's going on there, but we definitely don't want that. All right, let's turn these back on then. Hey, what's up guys? Just want to take 1 minute of your time to ask you if you are looking to start learning about drum bass production, or maybe you've already started and you just feel like you need a lot more of the fundamentals and you want to understand it really much more thoroughly and start to finish. We have just done a soft launch for our newest product. It's a membership called the School of Drum and Bass, and it has more than 200 videos that go from all the way in the beginning on how to produce music and how to use Ableton and all those kinds of things, all the way to producing a professional drum and bass track, mixing, and pretty much everything that needs to be covered for a beginner and an intermediate producer. If you feel like that might be interesting for you, there's a super special offer right now. You can get your first week for just £1 That is like $1.50 if you live in the US, or like €1.15. So if you're ready to level up your drum bass production, go check it out in the link below. All right, let's move on with the video. Now we can also choose to take not everything from this delay. So maybe we just want sort of everything around like maybe the 1K area. Sounds a bit cleaner in my opinion. And then so this is basically already pretty much like a basic version of the sound. However, when you're dealing with these big sort of leads that take up a lot of space, or at least that sound very big and take up a lot of space in the song, right? They're almost sort of replacing someone singing, like a vocal. We want those to be very wide, and that's why we want to start expanding on the stereo field. What that means is we want to change what's happening in the left ear and the right ear slightly from each other so that it sounds more realistic to your brain and wider. That's how you perceive it. And so one way that we can do that, which is also immediately going to make the sound a little bit cooler, is we can add on one hand a filter, and on the other hand, a flanger, which we're both going to sort of pan a little bit left and right. So let's put this phaser. The phase here sort of determines a little bit of the panning. It's not exactly the same, but it kind of is. And we can pan this filter to the left. When you put the rate down of this flanger, basically it is almost like you're putting an extra comb filter on there. So that's what we're going to try to achieve with this. And with this, we're going to do something similar. We're going to put on a reverb filter, specifically the reverb filter, because it gives some really nice sort of metallic tonality. Now, this mixes all the way up, and you're going to hear this is very exaggerated. Now, we don't want all of that, but what we can do is bring this mix down quite a bit, right? And because we have this panned to one side and this one as well, that means that it's going to only or mostly play this in one of the ears, and it's going to mostly play that in one of the other ears, which is really, really, really cool. And then we can play with this depth and this feed button to sort of determine how we want that flange filter to sound that's coming on of it. And then take the mix down of this as well a bit. Now, visibly right now, you might not think that this matters so much, but it is going to make this sound bigger and wider without sort of having to add like a whole bunch of voices of unison or do some other sort of cheap tricks that cause phasing issues later. So this is just a really nice way to do that, and you'll definitely notice it on bigger speakers or in your mix later, that it's just going to sound nicer and bigger and fuller. And then lastly, if you did want to add some extra voices, you could also add hyper/dimension. I don't think that it's necessarily necessary, but we can just put a little bit of that as well. Amazing. So we have that right now. That already sounds really, really good. And then you could choose to sort of see if you wanted to make that a little bit more interesting, right? Or at least a little bit more distorted. That sound, because it's sort of a square wave, the more gritty it becomes, the harder it hits sometimes. So we can reach that by using an overdrive or really any multi-band saturation type plugin that you have. So this is probably like a bit much. I think maybe it's clipping in here. We can turn down, for example, the dry wet of this. Nice. Guys, that is the sound. Very simple, but very effective, and you can use it in so many different ways. Let me know if you like this sound. If you want to hear more stuff by Dimension, also let me know. I'm definitely ready to hop on that train. Or if you have any other requests, leave them in a comment below. For that matter, if you felt like you learned something today, please do consider throwing me a like or a comment. It really helps put this content out to more people like you who want to learn about drum and bass. If you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. I've got super regular content coming out for the next month, at least every week, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a week, all geared towards making you a better producer. So hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.